And welcome, everyone, to an NCAA.com and March Madness Skype session. I'm Andy Katz. Pleased to be joined by Dan Gavitt, the Executive Vice President of the NCAA in charge of all men's and women's basketball. And Dan, as you know, we're dealing with unprecedented times across the country and the globe. And so I want to go back to the decision process of this past week in ultimately canceling the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournament as you guys were sequestered in New York, trying to work potentially on a bracket. So let's start with the timeline. At what point did it look like you were going to have to come to this decision that was ultimately made on Thursday?
Well, off the top end, I just want to say that, personally, it's probably the worst professional life of my career, which I know just pales in comparison to the emptiness that all the players and coaches are feeling right now. I just can't get out of my head how disappointed, devastated they are not to have a chance to play for national championship, not to have a chance to play, an NCAA basketball tournament. So we all feel that, and that sadness and that emptiness, and empathize with all those players this year who don't have that opportunity. It was a really unusual, to say the least, week. It was a week that evolved so quickly from where we thought on Sunday and had great confidence definitively that we were going to be able to play both tournaments at all sites with fans, and we're planning to do so. And then by Tuesday, announced on Wednesday, started to get a feeling like on Tuesday evening, and certainly by Wednesday we announced, as you know, that we're not going to be able to hold the tournaments with fans in attendance, as new information became available to the medical experts that advised them otherwise to not encourage large-scale events. And then with the developments that happened later on Wednesday, in particular, the NBA's unfortunate situation where Rudy Gobert was infected with the coronavirus, and that leading to all sorts of other consideration by us and others that, that by the time late yesterday, Thursday afternoon rolled around, resulted in the cancellation of our tournaments.
In that in-between phase, when it was going to be, no fans, in those crazy hours, what was the committee looking for in terms of smaller venues, especially in Atlanta, because it didn't make sense to obviously have it in Mercedes-Benz Stadium? So what was happening in those hours in trying to find locations where there were going to be no fans?
Well, we did an awful lot of contingency planning, actually going back a few weeks now, but ramped up, and with the speed and rapidity with all this was evolving, we did get to a point where we had started to line up very confidentially and without a lot of details in place, backup locations for first and second rounds, potentially for the first four as well, when the governor of Ohio decided no fans at large-scale events in Ohio. So we identified Kansas City Sprint Center as a potential first four backup site, as well as a first and second round site, if necessary, to move an entire first and second round site to another location, and also Lucas Oil Stadium at Indianapolis, where a regional was planned, as you know. We would have moved the court in early and had that as a backup first and second round site. So we also even identified Houston as a potential regional backup site, if needed, to play a regional on the off days where the Houston regional would have been played. So we really did put a bunch of contingencies kind of in place on the fly, and we needed to go there. Our goal all along and all week up until, the vote yesterday to otherwise cancel the tournament was to find a way to make these tournaments happen under any condition. Obviously safely, for all student athletes and coaches and fans in attendance. But our main goal all along was find a way to get these tournaments played to determine a national champion. So we actually got working late Wednesday night into the wee hours of the morning on an alternate format, one that we really did spend a fair amount of time on, and it ended up presenting to the committee, was a 16-team tournament that could be played over 5 days with all at-large selections played at one site, Thursday through Monday for the men's tournament, likely in Atlanta, and honoring our commitment to Atlanta with the Final Four not being able to be held there in full capacity, likely moving it to a smaller venue, and and just doing it in a very safe, controlled environment where we would at least give the top 16 teams, as determined by the committee, the opportunity to play for a national championship. We really didn't get, anywhere into full consideration of that because things evolved so quickly yesterday on Thursday that led to a medical decision and health decision not to have the tournament at all. But we got to that point where we were really seriously considering other formats to have any NCAA tournament at all.
What about the women, since their first and second round are on campus sites? What was being decided with the women?
Well, the Women's Committee wasn't to start meeting until yesterday at 4 o'clock, so they had yet to convene their meeting and hadn't had a chance to kind of really consider anything. But we were, in my mind, in talking with Lynn Holtzman a little bit, our Vice President of Women's Basketball, we would have considered a very similar, if not exact same format, if we had to go that far. To be clear, we really didn't get very far with consideration of that. But that's the level to which we had to plan here, a contingency plan, to try to get any tournament in at all. Because, to your question, I think we realized once the NBA made their decision, conference tournaments on Thursday started to cancel, that, this whole thing was not likely to happen over a 3-week period with a full field.
Dan, a lot of times early in the week, the first thing that happens is that first vote to get the teams into the field. At what point, if at any, was that even done to actually put teams into the bracket on a first ballot?
The men's committee started their meeting as always planned and as traditionally on Wednesday morning, did some other business at the start of the meeting, and the schedule was always to have that initial ballot cast on Wednesday afternoon before breaking for dinner. There was so much distraction around the decision to, at that point, hold the tournaments without fans, my involvement with some of those considerations, the committee's involvement, some of their own issues on campus and in their conferences that they were dealing with, that we never did get the initial ballot on Wednesday. We had to do that yesterday morning on Thursday, so we started a little behind. Had enough time to still do it. It had the process continued, but we didn't get that started until Thursday morning. And ultimately, an initial ballot, there were 31 teams that were selected. And before we were able to get any kind of seeding at all, the tournament had been canceled. And
all the conference tournaments were getting canceled in a domino effect on Thursday afternoon. And then there was a gap. I can't remember how much long, but there was a little bit of a gap, a couple hours before the NCAA tournament was ultimately canceled. What was going on during that gap from the conference tournaments being canceled to the NCAA tournament being canceled?
Well, I think the only reason that there was a gap at all is it took just that hour or two for the senior staff at the NCAA to get all the board members of the NCAA Board of Governors scheduled and on a call. There are, I don't know how many, 20 plus board members that they need to, communicate with to get on a call to have the discussion and consideration. And so we got to, I think, selecting a couple more teams, I believe. I was in and out of the room, frankly, but we did basically suspend, the process at that point, awaiting the results of that decision by the NCAA Board of Governors.
And the last thing, Dan, the sites that weren't able to hold the NCAA tournament this year, in the men's and ultimately the neutral sites for the women, especially the Final Fours. What could be decided? Hopefully we're going to have everything work out in this country, for future years where these sites could get back on the schedule.
Well, Atlanta for the men, New Orleans for the women, incredible hosts, previous hosts. They did an incredible job of planning with us for the men's and women's Final Fours. We are so deeply appreciative of their efforts and disappointed for them and for everyone involved. I'm sure they'll get serious consideration for future Final Fours, as they should, even just based on their past performance and indeed, this unfortunate circumstance as well.
Well, Dan, be safe. I know we'll talk soon. And as you said, it's just an unprecedented situation. We feel for obviously all the seniors and the hard work of everyone up and down on the men's side and the women's side, not getting this chance. But, global events took over and there was nothing absolutely, obviously, anyone could do about it.
Yeah, and the health and safety of all these student athletes and the coaches, and the trainers, and families is it's just of the utmost importance. And I hope and pray everyone's going to be fine, and know they will be by following all the guidelines that have been in place for with all these medical experts. And we'll get back at it next year for those that are still playing college basketball. But I'm heartbroken. The committee is heartbroken over this unfortunate development, and so we're all going to suffer through March together, but we'll get through it.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Good being with you.